In the mid-1700s, an industrial revolution began in England that transformed the way work was done. Rather than making goods by hand, new machines mass-produced products which lowered costs, increased profits, and changed the way people lived. By 1900, industrialization spread through Europe and to the United States, transforming the West into the dominant region of the world. What caused the Industrial Revolution, and why did it begin in England? What was life like before the Industrial Revolution? Before the Industrial Revolution, most Europeans worked and lived on small farming villages using inefficient methods of farming. Farmers relied on the medieval and inefficient three-field system. New farmers experimented with new farm techniques. As a result, the food that was produced kept the population of Europe from growing rapidly. In the mid-1700s, new farm techniques led to an agricultural revolution in Europe. Fences were used to protect large farms, called the enclosure movement. Scientific farming methods like crop rotation maximized farmland and increased production. New crops like corn and potatoes were introduced. New tools like the iron plow and seed drill made farming more efficient. As a result of this agricultural revolution, more food was made and Europe's population increased. This large population of workers who would soon find work in industrial revolution factories. The Industrial Revolution began in England for a variety of reasons. England had large deposits of natural resources, especially iron and coal. England had banks, a government that encouraged trade and invention, and money to invest in industry. England's colonies provided cheap raw materials and markets to sell industrial goods. From 1750 to 1850, England was the most industrialized nation in the world. What was the first industry to industrialize? The population boom created a demand for clothing, but traditional methods of textile making were slow. As a result, the textile industry became the first to become industrialized. What do these inventions do? Spin yarn. Weave yarn into cloth. Sewing machine. New inventions sped up spinning, weaving, and sewing. Cotton gin. Eli Whitney's invention of the cotton gin stimulated a demand for cotton textiles. European demand for cotton led to a boom in cotton production and slavery in the southern United States. New textile machinery led to the factory system. Power-driven machines were able to mass-produce goods very fast and very cheap. Factory owners made huge profits selling mass-produced clothes. The textile industry and the rise of the factory system led to the growth of other industries. Factories needed power and were usually located near rivers. In 1765, James Watt invented the first steam engine. Steam engines produced more power and allowed factories to be built in cities near workers. The textile industry and the rise of the factory system led to the growth of other industries. Factories led to a demand for faster transportation. Roads and canals were built in England. Robert Fulton's steamboat increased the speed of water travel. The greatest improvement to transportation was the steam-powered railroad. Railroads were fast, increased profits, and stimulated the iron and coal industries. Let's put a spotlight on the railroads revolutionizing life in Britain. The invention and perfection of the locomotive had at least 4 major effects. First, railroads spurred industrial growth by giving manufacturers a cheap way to transport materials and finished products. Second, the railroad boom created hundreds of thousands of new jobs for both railroad workers and miners. These miners provided iron for the tracks and coal for the steam engines. Third, the railroads boosted England's agricultural and fishing industries, which could transport their products to distant cities. Finally, by making travel easier, railroads encouraged country people to take distant city jobs. Also, railroads lured city dwellers to resorts in the countryside. Like a locomotive racing across the country, the Industrial Revolution brought rapid and unsettling changes to people's lives. growth of railroads from 1850 to 1880. The green lines were the railroads in use in 1850, and the red lines were what had been added by 1880. The Industrial Revolution led to an increase in coal to power factories and railroads. Iron was needed to produce new machines, engines, and railroad track. By 1800, England made more iron than all other nations in the world combined. Henry Bessemer invented a cheap process for making steel, which is stronger than iron. Steel allowed engineers to design more powerful machines, taller buildings, and longer bridges. Other inventions of the Industrial Revolution include electricity, new forms of communication such as the telegraph and telephone, business machines like typewriters and cash registers, and medical improvements like vaccines. The Industrial Revolution soon spread throughout Europe and America. Germany was quick to embrace new industrial technologies. Germany had large supplies of coal and iron ore. Germans built a large network of railroads, iron and textile factories. By the mid-1800s, Germany was one of the world's industrial leaders and built a powerful, modern military. The Industrial Revolution soon spread throughout Europe and America. Industrial ideas turned the United States into an important world power. Southern cotton led to textile mills in the North. After the Civil War in 1865, American industry boomed and the United States became a world leader in railroads, oil, steel, and electricity. Many U.S. companies merged to form large corporations and monopolies. Conclusions. From 1700 to 1900, revolutions in agriculture, industry, transportation, and communication changed Western Europe and the United States. Industrialization gave Europe tremendous economic and military power. Industry also had numerous negative effects on working conditions and the standard of living for urban workers.